In this video, we're going to continue doing more u substitution. So let's start off with secant to the fourth dx. Now you have to think to yourself, do you know the antiderivative of secant? No. Do you know the antiderivative of secant to the fourth? No. So we're probably going to have to use a trig identity. So now we know secant squared x is equal to 1 plus tangent squared x. So now I could break this up as secant squared x, oh, and I need an x here, times secant squared x dx. So now you could also write 1 plus tangent squared x times secant squared x. Now let's revisit this question. We don't know the antiderivative of secant or secant squared, but for tangent, can we make tangent into secant? Yes. So that's going to be our u. Let u equal tan x. One thing that I want to point out is it doesn't have to be tangent squared. You're just going to write it like that. So now let u equal tan x. So du over dx is going to equal secant squared x. And now you could say du equals secant squared x dx. So now this is really this piece. So now I could write 1 plus u squared du instead of that piece, the underlined pieces. Now the antiderivative of 1 is u, because it's in respect to u, plus u to the third over 3 plus c. So now u is tangent, so tangent x plus tangent to the third x over 3 plus c. And if you do the derivative of this, it will equal secant to the fourth x. Okay, I'm going to make a new canvas, so please hold on a second. What we're going to do is, let me redo that. Cotangent squared 3x. Now, do we know the antiderivative of cotangent? No. Cotangent squared? No. So you could do cosine over sine and then do it that way. I think it might be a little bit easier to just say cosecant squared 3x minus 1 is equal to cotangent squared dx. Now we know the antiderivative of cosecant squared, so that's not the issue. So u has to be that 3x. So let u equal 3x. So du over dx equals 3. Or I could say du over 3 equals dx. So this is dx. That's dx. So now I'm going to pull out that 1/3. Now the antiderivative of cosecant squared 3x. Oh, and I should have wrote 1/3. So let me replace cosecant squared. U minus 1 du. So now the antiderivative of cosecant squared is going to be 1/3. This is now going to be negative cotangent of u minus u plus c, and this is all times the third. So let me put a bracket. So now I'm going to get 1/3 times the quantity. So negative cotangent u is 3x minus 3x plus c. Or you could say negative cotangent to the 3x over 3 minus x plus c. And if you check the derivative of this, it will equal cotangent squared 3x. Now the next question we're going to do is probably a really difficult one. It's 4 cosine squared x dx. Now we don't know what the antiderivative of cosine squared is, so now we're going to have to do trig identities. So first one is cosine of 2x is equal to cosine squared x minus sine squared x. It's one of those identities that you don't really use. The same thing is going to be equal to 1 minus sine squared x minus sine squared x, because that's the same thing as cosine squared. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, so you could write that down. The same thing is going to be equal to 1 minus 2 sine squared x. The same thing is going to be equal to 1 minus 2 times the same thing as sine squared is 1 plus cosine. So in this case, it's going to be 1 minus cosine, because sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So now you're going to get 1 minus 2 plus 2 cosine squared x, which is going to equal negative 1 plus 2 cosine squared x. And now let me just write this down, the cosine of 2x. So now if I rewrite this, negative 1 plus 2 cosine squared x equals cosine of 2x, I can move over to 1 and say 2 cosine squared x equals cosine of 2x plus 1. Or I could just do a half. So now I could say cosine squared x equals all of this divided by 2. I'll just put the 1/2 here and put the parentheses here. So now that's what cosine squared equals. So now we're going to take this, we're going to use that information over here. So now I could say 4 times 1/2, because that's really the cosine squared, cosine of 2x plus 1. I need one more parentheses. Yeah. So now, when you do this, you're going to get 2 cosine 2x. Yeah, that's going to cross out. 2, I need a parentheses, plus 1. So now it's probably easier just to pull out the 2. So now I'm going to put the 2 here, and now I have cosine of 2x plus 1. Oh, and I need the dx. I shouldn't have lost the dx. So now, what are we going to let u equal? In this case, it's going to be 2x, because it's the angle, and now we know the antiderivative of, and I need parentheses, of cosine. So now, du over 2 is going to equal dx. I skipped a step here, but I'm also running out of room. So the 2's are going to cross out. Half of 2 is 1. So that's going to go away, and now you get cosine of u plus 1 du, and the antiderivative of this is going to be u, or in this case, sine u plus 2x plus c. So finally, our answer is going to be, I'm sorry everything's jumbled up, I'm kind of almost out of space. It's going to be 2x plus sine 2x plus c. And one thing that I want to point out is this piece over here should be a u. So I'm going to replace that and put the u there. And now you plug in the u later on. Okay, I hope this video helped.